So, as in my last video, I said that the series is basically over. Now, I wanted to get into talking about what's going to happen after the championship. I know that a lot of people don't like to talk about that, but I found it interesting as I look at the numbers right now and I break this down of what's going to happen with the teams next season and how is that going to pan out and how is it going to work out with the league and contracts and salary, etc. Right? The first thing that I saw right now was that teams are in big debt, right? Like the Denver Nuggets next year, the good thing about the Nuggets, and to start with them, the Denver Nuggets have most of their guys secured for the next 2 years. And I mean that very literally. Like, uh, they have Nikola Jokic until 2028. So they don't have to worry about Jokic. But that's normal. Most teams have their superstar signed for way out in the future, even if their superstars is old, because that's the guy who you want to build around and contend around. They also have Jamal Murray secured, but only until the 2025 season. But I imagine his value won't go up much. I'm sorry, but Jamal Murray, unless apart from the salary cap going up, there's not gonna be any substantial changes in his contract because I doubt that he turns a new page in his career. Like these playoff performances are great. But let's face it, which team in the NBA is gonna pay Jamal Murray $45 million, right? Like he's earning 33 next season, $33 million, and I would say that maybe his cap is 40 million. So in my opinion, the Nuggets could work around him as the salary cap keeps going up, but. Then, apart from the big two, you have Michael Porter Jr., which they have under contract until 2027, so they don't have to worry about him. Aaron Gordon, which they have secured until 2025, right? Which they have secured until 2025, and that's very interesting, as even though he ends the same year as Jamal Murray, or there are going to be contractual issues there with paying both of them, as the salary cap and the new CBA has made it extremely and much harder to pay guys, right? And for expensive teams to, keep going. And then they have Contavious Caldwell-Pope until 2024. But I just want to say that Aaron Gordon has a player option for 2026. And Contavious Caldwell-Pope has a player option for 2025, right? Apart from there, the rest of the roster is non-guaranteed. The only players who actually make the lineup are Christian Braun, which they have under team option, so they are just going to choose to keep him as he's basically under with the team until 2026. But most of their depth next year is probably gone. And this is something that happens, and it's going to happen a lot in the new NBA, because since the salary cap allows for superstar players to get such big contracts, and for their contracts to go rising every year, it's going to make it extremely difficult for teams to keep 8-man rotations alive. Like this year, we're probably not going to see more Ish Smith or Jeff Green, as Jeff Green this year had a player option, and I'm pretty sure he took it. But next year, I don't think they're going to be able to offer those two guys the money that they deserve, which each of them makes around $4.5 million respectively. They're already over the salary cap this year, right? And next season, they have $168 million guaranteed, right? And next season, they don't have Bruce Brown confirmed that he's going to stay, as he has a player option. Ish Smith and Jeff Green, I think we can take them as out of the door. And even though, yes, you have your starting five basically secured for the next, two more years as a championship team, that bench matters. and it matters a lot. And I'm sorry, but in big games, you're not going to be playing Vlatko Konchar. And I understand that they have guys like Reggie Jackson in the bench and Thomas Bryant who have actually gotten real NBA minutes and they could actually utilize. But let's face it, they do not compare to a guy like Jeff Green or Ish Smith who have that much experience and who have been in the NBA forever. Even though I do think that if Jeff Green was a championship, he probably is going to retire because his time is due. But for the Nuggets, it just looks like they're going to be very expensive, right? The salary cap next year is $134 million, and they're going to be guaranteed at $168. So in my opinion, the Nuggets might not make it back to the finals next year, just off of depth. And this is what we saw that happen with the Bucks, where if you manage to, and with the Warriors, where if you manage to get 1 year where contractually everything works, in my opinion, you have to take extreme advantage of that, because in this NBA, with how high player salaries are, like Jokic's contract is the biggest ever, Stephen Curry is insane, and players like LeBron, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal all have over $40 million. It has become increasingly harder to pay NBA salaries. And for the next team, the Heat, it's the same thing. They have all their players locked in for next season. Like basically all of them except Kevin Love and role players, right? Udonis Haslem is retiring. But the problem with Miami is that they've locked up too much money in players who don't play that much, right? And this is the problem which is going to haunt them next season. The players who have mostly played in the playoffs for them, right, are Cody Zeller, who does not have money secured next year. His contract expires this year. Max Strus, right, which does not have a contract secured next year, and he's probably going to want like $5 to $7 million because of his contributions to the team throughout the years. Gabe Vincent, who's probably going to want the same contract or even maybe $10 million. These guys, because they've been so good. Udonis Haslem is leaving, and then Kevin Love, who doesn't have it secured. Now, with this being said, let's face it, Miami, take all of that away. They have $173 million guaranteed next year. And this is because they have so much money in players who are not that impactful to their team. You have Jimmy Butler, obviously, the number one most impactful player. You have Bam Adebayo, obviously, and those two guys make about $70 million combined. But then you have Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, which make about $47 million for the Heat. No, $57 million. So when you have $77 million in between Jimmy and Bam, then you have about 50. No. You have about $47 million in Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, plus the $77 million that you have in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, plus Victor Oladipo, which you paid $10 million for some reason, right? And he has a player option next year, which he's obviously going to take because he's been injured so much. And then you have Caleb Martin for a few more years, and you have that Tyler Hero contract, which is running you about $30 million a year. It just looks like the Miami Heat have none of their players really on contract, and the players which actually play and don't get injured, which are Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Cody Zeller, Duncan Robinson, and Victor Oladipo, who actually play and are the rotation for this team. Most of those guys aren't on contract. So for next year, I think these two championship teams look rough. Denver's going to be left without veteran depth, without Jeff Green, without Ish Smith, and they're probably going to have to run six-man rotations in the playoffs, and that does not work. And for Miami, most of their important pieces like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Cody Zeller do not have a contract, and they And Miami has locked up so much money in their top players, especially Jimmy Bam, Kyle Lowry, and Tyler Hero, that let's face it, they're probably gonna just have to stick to those guys until their contracts are over and hope for the best. Cross their fingers. I hope that both of these teams can work it out, but honestly, it looks very rough for the two finals teams next year and how their rosters are going to look with this situation.